Welcome to the Embracing Brokenness podcast, where our goal is to engage with all of those willing to venture deeper into their transformational journey with Christ. Here's your host and co-founder of Embracing Brokenness Ministries, Steve Adams.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. This week, I'd like to cover a topic that I personally have been struggling with, but I know so many others as well that have been trying to tackle this in the flesh, and it is a topic and it's a reality that only can be tackled in the spiritual. So we're going to talk this week about the war for our minds. And it is a war. It is a all-out battle with many battles to try and attempt to win the war, which we understand the enemy and know that he will not successfully win. But that does not mean he won't put out his best effort to derail us from our calling. So I was reading a book entitled by Greg Groeschel entitled Winning the War in Your Mind. Now, might be something worth picking up if this topic is of interest to you, but I want to read just a short segment here. There is a reason why your mind is a war zone and you are under attack. It's critical that you become aware of the fight. You cannot change what you do not confront. If you ignore the battle, you lose the battle. The Apostle Paul made this truth clear. He said this: we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. And that's in Ephesians. Your adversary is not your boss, spouse, child, ex, or neighbor with a demonic dog that is always barking. You may not realize it, but the one you are fighting against is your spiritual enemy, the devil. Satan is your unseen enemy whose mission is to steal and kill and destroy and to devour you. Satan despises you with more hatred than you can imagine. He wants to keep you from God and from the life God has for you. He wants to keep you from intimate relationships with those you love most. He wants to rob you of inner joy and abiding peace. He wants to strip you of the fulfillment you could have in knowing you are making a difference with your life. How does he do it? Simple. He lies. That, unfortunately, is the truth of the enemy that we're faced with every day as Christians, in a world that really is focused on themselves. So I want Colleen to share something with you, and this is recorded from a session we did just last week at the mission where she works. Quality's not great, but the message is awesome. So I'm going to turn it over to her and allow her to finish this off by delving deeper into this subject. But hang with it, because in the end you're going to hear a fabulous story about an experience that she had with someone who really understands love and self-sacrifice on behalf of the kingdom.
How many people in this room feel like our world in the last couple years has become even more chaotic than we've ever seen? Okay? So the destruction, man says their answers, we have to be kinder, we have to do X, Y, and Z. Which as Christians, we're called to that. We are called to bring the kingdom rules, which are what governed in the beginning in Eden, that we loved each other, we were kind to each other, to bring Jesus's character to everything. But there are people that are actually giving into chaos because, and actually a lot of Christians too, are giving into the chaos of the enemy. But interesting, we think of warfare as something that is out there. And what I want you to think about in the discussion, I want us to have, what is happening inside of you? Where is the battle for you? Okay? Understanding that the hallmarks of the adversary and these kingdoms, so the setup, which is an interesting one if you're not familiar with this, if you ever said, where do the Greek gods come from? Where's Apollo? They're like half human, half God, sons of God. Where do these people come from? Why did somebody create Greek mythology? Did you ever wonder that? What are those stories about? Right? Is it a different religion? If you go back into Hebrew times and you look at the path of old cultures before the flood comes, you see these kind of half man, half, they're called the Nephilim in the Bible, who are rulers, they're giants. David and Goliath was probably a Nephilim. He was like, how tall was he, babe? Do you know? 9 feet, 10 feet tall or something?
9 feet.
9 feet tall, okay? So, but you'll hear about powerful rulers. Babylon being the most evil of kingdoms that we see on earth. It is talked about as a real place. And the ruler is called Nimrod. So we hear about this person with incredible power. He is influenced by evil. We actually see Babylon referred to in spiritual, if you've ever read Revelation, and it talks about what happens in the end for all of this. Babylon is actually the most powerful, controlled nation. And so you have evil that is driving a lot of things. So the question is, what are we called to as Christians? What is our role in fighting spiritual battle in my life so I can stand up and love the world the way Jesus did, even if the world hates me? A couple things. If you go to the garden in Genesis 3, when we make the choice to choose, we chose to know good and evil. God held the knowledge of good and evil. He knew what it was. He knew what was good for us. And so the choice is, no, we want to know it. And that's the choice that evil makes in the spiritual, principalities. When you accept Jesus, if you really get not, I want a ticket to heaven, but if you say, I want to bring an invisible kingdom that I am not buying that this world has it right, okay? This is, in the Matrix, it's basically technology, a form of technology. Artificial intelligence is blinding people. And so what it does is it keeps them satisfied. It keeps memories going that they have the perfect family and the perfect life and then it's actually drawing power. It's stealing the power from the people. So that's the premise of the Matrix. In reality, if you really understand what has happened to all of us, that we live in this false self and are trying to get ours while we're on earth, we're no different than the Matrix. That we don't understand, we are here for a very short time, but we are eternal beings. We look at our physical bodies and say this is all there is. A lot of people do that, right? And even if we get that we are eternal beings, which means we will live on for eternity, it's a matter of choice. How we're going to live, are we going to live that in the presence of pure good and God, restoration to God, where the good is? Or are we going to live that in the absence of God, which take any good you see in this world, pull it out, and see what man does to each other and say, that would be my choice for eternity. I mean, that's basically the choice we're making, if you buy that there's eternity. If you believe we're physical beings, that this is all there is, you're going to buy into the world system of, life's a bitch and then you die, get what you can because you only go around once. You're going to buy into a belief system that says, according to the world, the more money you have, the better you are. The more power you have, the better you are. Look at, if you have money or you have power, you can get away with anything in this world. It is sick when you think about what money buys you and what power grants you access to. So two primarily huge things of money and power. And so the deceptive things of evil in the way it's constructed, what we run after in this world, is very similar to the Matrix, where we are blinded to eternity and to really what this is all about. And so what I think Neo is doing, he doesn't understand the choice fully. The way I just clearly said to you, you may go, oh, I'll take the red pill and go find out what this is really about. He's not really sure what he's opening up to knowing, but he's making the choice to know it. And as he goes into that choice, he realized that people being controlled by something and it all being an illusion and them just kind of going through life controlled is actually really not a life. And he understands some things outside matrix that includes love and things of serving, other-centered love, where you serve other people, even to the point where you give up your own life. So it's not all about me, it is about this greater thing. And so in the very end, when basically he's given the choice, like the choice would be evil, I'm going to kill you, I can control you. And he's basically saying, I don't even care, I'm going to choose love. And then when he chooses love, the evil dissipates. There are some powerful truths in that. But our brains, I'm going to do the hand puppet again. You're going to see the hand puppet because I think this is important. If we're talking about a fight for our brain, let's understand how our brain works, okay? If you want to do the little hand puppet with me, you can if you've never heard this before. Everybody's brain, first thing that comes online, you're being created in your mother's womb. This bottom part of your hand is called the reptilian brain. Everybody has it, including the reptiles. That's why it's called reptilian. It does things, that's your life support system. It makes your heart beat. It makes you breathe. It does everything in your body you never even think about. If you had to think about all these things, you would die because you'd never keep all the things going that the reptilian brain. When we pull somebody off of life support, the rest of their brain has shut down, but we have this life support function to keep essential things going. Okay, so everybody, animals, everybody shares that. If you open up your hand, what comes across your thumb here is called the mammalian brain. You ever watched, you guys like to watch the nature shows and you see the lion chasing after the gazelle? Okay, so the mammalian brain, I always hope the gazelle gets away, by the way. I don't want to see the guy eat him. I don't know about you, but the mammalian brain, the gazelle is, happily chomping on its grass out on this nice prairie land, and all of a sudden it gets alerted, something's wrong. So its brain goes from calm to active, okay? And what happens is you're gonna see these fingers coming down are very, very, very important to us being calm and digesting food and working through emotions. But God made us in the Garden of Eden, this is what we look like all the time, nice and calm, okay? But when we came out of the garden and there wasn't protection, we had the ability to go, there's danger, flip some of these higher level functionings because I need to get into fight or flight mode. So Mr. Gazelle's like, I think something's a little scary. And so I flip my lid so that all of my blood rushes to my extremities. I shut down anything that is not needed in my body, which includes like digestion. Everything that's not needed, most of my brain functions that would say, I need to be at that appointment in 5 minutes, so I really shouldn't fight the lion. All those things shut down. And your body is moved into a response mode called fight or flight. And you are either going to fight the lion, you are going to run away from the lion, or you're going to completely freeze and have no clue what to do, but that's all controlled by this. Okay? All mammals have that level of the brain. That's why we see this response that they can be alerted and run away. If you make your fingers come around, these are the higher level functions of the brain. Your middle finger is called your prefrontal cortex. You would not be able to create a schedule and get out of bed and get where you need to go if you didn't have executive functioning, so it's higher level functioning. The interesting thing, and all of your brain is important, but the interesting thing about the prefrontal cortex, it is where empathy, your ability to be in the presence of somebody in pain and understand that, comes from compassion. But we found in the last 5 years, there's a little spot, when they do brain scans, there's a little spot where your concept of meeting with God, your views of God are in this spot. And it's activated when you're talking about God, when you're in the presence of God, it activates this spot. So God put a little spot in your brain that's only for him. That spot in your brain does not activate for anything else. I mean, scientists, and this is true across multiple religions, they weren't just looking at Christians. Across multiple religions, you have a God spot in your brain that never activates for anything else you do. So it's powerful, right? So here's the thing. What does God want for us? Return to the garden, the rules of the kingdom. You have nothing to fear. I've got you. I am your protector. He wants your brain to look like this. So fear, the fear center causes you to flip your lid. God made it to alert us, but he never wanted us to have to use it. The opposite of fear is love. Most people say the opposite of love is hate, but it's actually not. Hate is derived from fear. So fear is the higher thing, if you will. So the opposite of love is fear. So God's command is do not fear, which is part of him saying, if you return to the kingdom where I've got you, there is no reason to fear. When you fear, you actually are agreeing with the adversary that there's something to be afraid of. When you fear, watching some of our racial unrest, just some of the issues we're dealing with in society is just so discouraging, because here's the deal. God, it's level at the foot of the cross. Every single one of us is made in God's image. The beauty of diversity is we can see all facets of it. We see people who are different when we get to know people. But fear is actually the driver. The fear is not necessarily of the other person. We have to make the person the other, something different than us, to fear them, which is agreeing with the enemy. The enemy wants us to rip each other apart, okay? So fear drives hate in all kinds of ways. God is the God of love. God tells us in the Bible over and over and over again that perfect love, which can only come from God. We cannot love perfectly because we still fight with our flesh and we want what's best for us. Only God has perfect love, but perfect love, which is God, casts out all fear. So the problem when we're afraid is that we are aligning with the adversary, the enemy, of what is true, which is what we did in the garden in the beginning. Where are you choosing to make your investment? Where are you choosing to make your investment? The adversary tells us this is the investment. In order for you to live well here, it's not about a ticket to heaven. God says, bring the kingdom to earth. The Lord's Prayer, when you pray it, and if you don't know how to pray, go find the Lord's Prayer, pray it every single day. It is the most powerful prayer. Jesus said this is how you pray. What are we praying there? We're not saying, hey, someday we're going to get there and be with you. We can't wait to see what the rules are. We're saying as followers of Christ, we're bringing those rules to earth. How many of us even live like those rules are true? Or have done a search to say, what is true about the kingdom? See, because here's the interesting thing about the kingdom. And I'm going to tell you a story. I have witnessed just beautiful, beautiful things in my 10 years here. But probably the most beautiful of all that I will never forget, I have a hero of the faith. She's very different than me, but she is my hero of the faith. Her name is Heidi Baker, if anybody knows who she is. The reason she's my hero is because I've met her speaking at several conferences, and when I caught her gaze, I have never seen such pure love in my life. And when I saw that love for everyone who came into her presence, I went, that's probably pretty close to what it was like to look into Jesus' eyes, okay? The other reason she's my hero of the faith is she gave up everything and went to Mozambique, poorest country in the world, highest number of orphans, ravaged by AIDS and ravaged by diseases that have big percentages of the population completely blind, okay? So a very, very difficult place to live. And Heidi gave up she came from a very wealthy family in California. She gave it all up and basically went to the slums. And today she feeds over 40,000 orphans in Mozambique. And those kids have been trained up to go around and spread the gospel and do what the Bible called us to, the disciples, to heal the blind. Miracles happen all the time. It is amazing how she walks by faith. She is my hero. And something we talk about, I train the staff here at Water Street, stop for the one. At all times, if somebody needs you, you stop. Stop for the one. Life is about stopping for the person who needs you the way that Christ would stop for the one. Your life is not about you, okay? So I love Heidi Baker. I have loved her for years. When we rolled out the new mission model 8 years ago, we did some of her stuff. Some of the staff back then trained. I said, guys, we're going to stop for the one. This is going to be our heart of love we're going to carry. 2 years after we started training staff on that, sitting in a leadership team meeting in the boardroom, and the guy who kind of took payments when donors came in runs into the boardroom with a check from Heidi Baker. He said, this woman named Heidi Baker came in, she followed some homeless people down the street. She ended up over at Mom's store. Followed these homeless people, and because they had these little kids, and she said, I wanted to see where they were going. So she follows them to Mom's, and she said, where are you guys all from? Like, you got these lanyards, and, you know. And they said, oh, the mission right across the street. So she comes over to the mission, gives us a check. Now understand, she's serving the poorest of the poor. There is no money, okay? Gives us a check, and then says, I am speaking at the Marriott, and I want any guests from here and any staff from here to be my guests at the Marriott. Now, the conference she was speaking at was sold out. And what had just happened at the Marriott that was crazy, for about 2 years, everybody was really wigged out about the homeless around the Marriott, and they were cleaning them out every chance they get. You weren't allowed near the Marriott, right? So we had people, when we said, yeah, there's a person going to be at the Marriott, and you're invited in. We're not allowed at the Marriott. I'm like, sure you are. Like, you are allowed at the Marriott. So we had, a friend of mine and myself were like in the back, and a bunch of guests came in. I think we probably had maybe 30 people, men and women. And the craziest thing happened, because you know, this is how the world works, right? Like, if you're really special, you get the front seats. You usually have to pay extra for the front seats. But everybody knows if you were sitting in the front seats, you are the most important of the important, right? Yep. I love this. There are 2 rows of dignitary seats. In other words, the really she, who's who, paid the most money. Heidi Baker gets up on stage. She looks around. Now, I mean, this place is packed. There's tons of people. She said, are any of my Water Street friends here? And people are raising their hands, you know, and I'm like pointing, yeah, back here. And she says, I need the people in the front rows to give up their seats, because my friends are going to come take these seats. So all our Water Street people, I didn't go. I'm standing in the back, tears pouring down my face. And she spoke to our people. Now, there's a principle in the scripture that we hear about, but I will tell you, it's a very different thing to see it. And that principle in the scripture says that the first shall be last. So if you get it here with your red line, you ain't getting it in heaven. You're at the end of the road now, right? For eternity. But if you are last, the people that we don't even value, if you are last, guess what? God's inviting you to the feast first, okay? So the people who are last, and we don't even see last in this country, okay? Like, we may feel like you're at the bottom of the barrel. The reality is, you go to third world countries, there are people that the barrel hasn't even started, okay? So the last, God talks about, it's an upside down kingdom. In other words, the rules of this world are upside down. They're going to look different in the kingdom. And I remember looking up and seeing Heidi minister. She talked to these 2 rows as if they were the only people in the entire place. And we had people that were like, we get God differently. It was unbelievable what happens. But why I cried and couldn't stop crying, I mean, the tears just kept coming and coming. And for probably a couple of years, I could not tell this story without crying, was I saw what the kingdom looked like. I saw who God honors and who God values and how mixed up our world is, okay? I think I also realized how much I had bought into a system, because I had a pretty high-profile career, and I flew in first class, and people held up signs when I got into a city to get into the car to drive me wherever I need to go. I mean, I had come from something that felt really good at some point in my life. Like, I have arrived, you know, people hold up signs when you get in the car, I go run around, tell them what to do, fly to the next city. I thought that was really important. I had arrived. And you know what? I realized I was so screwed up even as a Christian, and when I arrived was when I got that upside down kingdom and I saw it in practice. So there is a place where the blinders have to come off if we want to do what we pray in the Lord's Prayer and bring the kingdom rules to earth.
This was another episode of the Embracing Brokenness podcast. For more information on Embracing Brokenness Ministries, or to subscribe to our blog, podcast, YouTube channel, or engage with us on social media, please visit our website at embracingbrokenness.org. Thanks for joining us.